Hey guys, on the Buck Brief, Chef Andrew Gruel is with us. He's got great restaurants in California, Calico Fish House, also a man you see on Fox News and elsewhere sharing his insights and, of course, tips for the kitchen, tips for running a small business successfully. Chef, great to see you, sir. Make America healthy again. It is something that RFK Jr. has popularized now, an extension of MAGA. It is now MAHA, I guess, or MAHA, whatever. What do you want to see as the top things that RFK Jr. could accomplish that relates to food supply, all these things, and the health issues that people have?
Yeah, I think that we get really sucked into the granular topics, right? We talk about like seed oils or pharmaceuticals and how much money is going from point A to point B and what's in our food system. And there's so many topics within this general conversation that we can get really detailed on. But I think that pulls us away from the bigger picture. And the bigger picture here is that if we want to fix anything when it comes to health and it comes to food service, or furthermore, even the merge of food and pharmaceuticals, which I think is a lot more connected than people imagine, we just need to completely scrap the system altogether. So this is what I keep saying. You know, you've got the USDA, the FDA, you're talking like 18,000, 20,000 employees in each, and they're overseeing a system related to our food products and food safety and pharmaceuticals, but generally the health of America. And we've only gotten sicker, right? Like you look at chronic diseases amongst kids, 20% of our entire federal budget goes towards healthcare in general, and that cost is just skyrocketing. We have failed from the perspective of utilizing the government to fix things. We just need to completely get rid of and gut out the USDA, the FDA, and start over. We as citizens, as consumers, we know how to eat healthy, right? Like we have the agency to do it. But over the past 10 or 20 years, it's almost like we've handed that agency, that ability to make decisions for ourselves over to the government, and they've completely failed us. So that's step one right there. We got to gut the entire system out, because you realize, and I don't think people realize this, everything the USDA and the FDA does, and this applies to tons of federal agencies, you're also getting that done on a state level. There's redundancies across the board. So it's just like a big bureaucratic bowl of molasses where nothing gets done. So get rid of them. That's step one.
Get rid of them. And then what should be some of the changes that, like, what would a better version of the FDA be doing? I mean, do you think it really is looking at, seed oils is a big thing. I know that your restaurants don't use any seed oils. Do you believe that stuff is all inflammatory? Like, where do you view the real points of possible change that would have a positive effect on? I mean, as we know, this country, obesity rates have absolutely skyrocketed. There's so many problems. I mean, a lot of people have no idea what's going into their food supply. They have no idea about how to deal with some of these things. What do you think are some of the key points that could be improved by a smarter, leaner, better version of the FDA, whatever we'd call it?
Yeah, it's strictly education. That's the lens through which I look at all of this, is education, right? And that's obviously information. So better labeling laws, not hiding behind confusing names on our ingredient lists, right? Like we don't even understand what is inside of our food, because many times it's just the chemicals they list. There's a multitude of information behind that, right? So we got to get cleaner with the labeling laws. We got to demand point of origin. As an example with seafood, like it can be labeled U.S. seafood, but what happens, especially with the majority of our seafood here in the United States, is that it's shipped overseas to Asia, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, processed over there, treated with chemicals. In many cases, all of the seafood that's coming through is being tested for bleach, malachite green, and it's showing up positive. So a lot of chemicals in that seafood shipped back into our food supply, and it's labeled as U.S. caught, right? So people see it and they're like, oh, this is Alaskan seafood, but it's actually been completely adulterated and manipulated and processed in China. It's essentially Chinese seafood. And that applies, that's just like one little anecdote. So labeling laws are important, but that goes back to education and pulling together a cadre of medical professionals of different thoughts, because I don't think that there's we know there's not universal consensus on things that you're talking about, right? Whether seed oils are good or bad, and where should we be should we be eating saturated fats or should we be eating these alternative unsaturated fats? But if you bring together a bevy of medical professionals and nutritionists to actually come up with a consensus on information displaying various sides of this argument for the consumer to then make their own decision. That's all that they should be doing. That is the only thing that federal and state government should be doing when it comes to our food supply. And then the next thing they should be doing, the second step on that list, is allowing and creating a system where American or domestic or local, I kind of consider domestic or U.S. wild, U.S. caught, U.S. raised as being local, especially in this globalist economy, to be creating a system where those products are more available than the imported products. Because it's, and they'll talk about, there's various ways you can do that, right? Like tariffs or just marketing the U.S. products or deregulating so that those products can go in between different states. And everyone says, well, the price of all these goods are going to go up. You put tariffs on there. When it comes to food, it's never an apples to apples conversation. I mean, I remember like Econ 101, right? Like the idea of comparative advantage. If I am buying a tomato from Mexico for $1 and the same tomato costs $4 to grow in the US market, buy the Mexican tomato. Now I have the tomato and an extra $3 to spend locally. But when it comes to food, those tomatoes aren't equal, right? So you can't use that comparative advantage when it comes to economics and food because of what it does to our bodies. We might buy the Mexican tomato treated with chemicals, and then 10 years down the road, we're spending $100,000 on healthcare from eating so many chemically treated tomatoes. They're treated with glyphosate, what have you.
Let's talk. I mean, we're just discussing food here with Chef Andrew Gruel. The cost of things is still very high, as you know. We're hoping to get a lot of relief here from the incoming Trump administration, but prices are high and people are running up debts. And they're debts that come from the day-to-day things, and it can be scary after a while, right? Financial stress growing over time. But there are solutions. donewithdebt.com. Unlike others out there, Done With Debt has created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done With Debt stands between you and bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. They have a plan to put more money in your pocket month one, and Done With Debt is accepting new clients right now, but you need to hurry because some of their debt strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done With Debt help you make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 888-322-1054 now. That's donewithdebt.com or call 888-322-1054. How's life for small businesses these days? I mean, you run a bunch of restaurants, and how is Doge, you think, possibly going to be able to help at the federal level? Maybe there'll be some trickle down that happens where states realize they can't be quite as insane, although I know California might be asking too much. But what's it like these days? I mean, do you feel like the climate is improving rapidly because of the incoming administration? You tell me.
Yeah, two things are happening. So you got the emotional piece, just by virtue of a new administration and obviously everything that's kind of surrounding that administration and the prospects of a stronger economy are helping businesses right now. We've seen it across the board, and I've talked about this over the past couple of weeks. Is like the day that Trump won, the next day our restaurant sales increased. I talked to restaurateurs all over the country. They all felt the same effect. Now, you can speculate as to why that is. I mean, is it just a sigh of relief that it's over and the news cycle's changing? Is it just a general appreciation for something fresh coming in? Whatever it is, we're seeing it happen. I mean, and it's not just in restaurants. I think it's also retail. I talked to a lot of my wholesale distributors, and they said the same thing. They're feeling it as well. Restaurant purchases are up across the board. Doge, Bitcoin, right? Like you're seeing just this emotional reaction. But then I think when you get into more specifics about the economy, and I look at Doge as in the Department of Government Efficiency, and I say, okay, well, you're right. Like, how's that going to help me in California? The way it'll help us is that if you see the federal government paring things down and the debt's not going to be as crushing in terms of spinning our economy into the toilet, then I think there's going to be a lot more access to capital, right? Banks, private equity, you name it, right? Individual investors, family funds, even just people who are sitting with like $5 million on the sideline and don't know where to put it, perhaps retirees, baby boomers. When that capital is accessible, especially to small businesses, people like me who are small businesses seeking investment in that like $1 to $5 million range to grow and ultimately scale much larger. That's a really weird space to raise capital, because anything below that, and you're looking at high interest merchant finance loans, friends and family or angels, anything up, For a private equity firm to do a $10 million investment is the same amount of money it would cost them to do a $100 million investment. So when you're seeing access that capital now come off the sidelines, that really helps small businesses in America. And that's not a state issue, right? Like that doesn't matter. I can have somebody in Idaho invest in California because now they feel confident that they're putting their money into an economy that's not going to end up getting, stabbed.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see how already. I mean, I'm not a big crypto guy. Too late, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I should have been, because now Bitcoin's over 100,000. But there are already economic forces clearly coming together here that are indicating a bullish view, not just of the stock market, but of the economy. Even though the stock market's obviously incredibly high as it is, which is a little concerning, but a bullish view of the economy overall and economic growth. Come back. I want to talk to you about restaurants here, actually, after this. Have some fun. We'll get into this. But first up, protecting your family, essential. It's where our sponsor, Sabre, comes in. Look, you want to layer your defenses to buy yourself time, and start with Sabre driveway alerts to know when someone's approaching, paired with floodlights to deter them. Sabre's also got door security bars to reinforce your front and back doors, stopping up to 650 pounds of force to secure entry points, even when you're not at home. And if you are home, many invasions happen at night. Sabre's Home Defense Pepper Launcher is the ultimate choice to protect yourself and your family with a non-lethal option. These projectiles hit hard, causing intense pain, and are very effective at stopping the threat. Sabre's Home Defense Launcher is the only 68 caliber launcher with a 7 projectile capacity, offering up to 40% more shots than others. Go to sabreradio.com to see all these different home and personal defense products out there. SABRE radio.com. Or call this number, 844-824-SAFE. That's 844-824-SAFE. All right, Chef. If I had to ask you right now, other than your own place, Calico Fish House, but if we're talking about like Michelin 2-3 star kind of joints, what do you think right now are the best 2 or 3 restaurants in America that you've eaten in?
That's a tough call. So here in Southern California, you've got this restaurant, Knife Pleat, which is a Michelin star restaurant. Tony Enow was originally the chef for all of Elaine Ducas's spots in New York City, and then he ended up in LA like 10 or 15 years ago. Funny enough, like full circle, I actually worked under him at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston in like 2002 or 2003. He was the chef of the dining room there. So he's definitely my favorite restaurant. I think the best restaurant in America. It's right here in Orange County. But then in, I think Florida's got some really good spots coming up. I think a lot of chefs have moved from like the big metropolitan markets into Florida. And I don't seek out the fine dining restaurants. I like more of those kind of up and coming, I don't want to say hole in the walls or diners, drive-ins and dives, but just, a good, solid, like mediocre, medium priced restaurant that's just serving scratch made food. We're seeing a lot more of that, especially in Florida.
I do think it's the case, and I think back to my youth in New York City, that you see more good food in more places across America than ever before, and just food is at a higher level and a higher quality in this country than ever before. So I know we were talking about like food supply issues, but there are, in a lot of places you can find really good stuff where it used to be. I remember like visiting my grandparents in upstate New York. I mean, whatever the kind of grocery store chain that was there, whatever they got, like that was it, unless you want to get in the car for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's New York. I'm thinking what that'd be like Hannaford markets, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine. That is the case. I think that what we used to see was a lot of the products in America that were just funneled into the big cities, right? Chicago, New York City, perhaps Miami, but not as much. That now there's more suburban development around some of these agrarian communities. I mean, even take Maine, for example. I went to college up in Maine, and it was like lobstering and potatoes, but now you've actually got phenomenal restaurants up there and a bounty of fresh local food. So you're seeing like really cool restaurants pop up from Portland all the way up through into, past Bar Harbor, like Rockland, Maine. But that's applying across the country in a lot of these local areas. And the food is staying local versus being chemically treated and then shipped across the country. Even when you've got like New Jersey tomatoes, right, which are the best tomatoes, in my opinion, in the country, in that sweet spot in the summertime, a lot of times they'll pick them unripe and then they'll treat them with like nitrous or, like a chemical in order to truck ripen them and ship them across the country. Now all that stuff stays local.
What's the best way to, like, if somebody wanted to just improve their knife skills, is it just like get a bunch of things and just start chopping? Like, how can I get better as an amateur chef in the kitchen? I do a bit of cooking, a little bit. Like, I'm not great, but like I'm solid. Like, chef, you wouldn't spit out my omelet. I'm just gonna say it. You wouldn't spit it out. You'd be like, this isn't too bad. I cook a lot of eggs, a lot of protein, a lot of steak. I get lazy about sides, so I've actually become one of these people who will go do takeout from like a place and get their Brussels, their sort of roast Brussels sprouts or whatever. I mean, that's really lazy, but I'm just telling you the truth. And then I'll make my own steak because I'll get it from the butcher, exactly what I want, seared exactly, cooked how I want, etc. But what are the ways to improve knife skills? Like, should I watch YouTube videos on cutting technique? Like, is this something that you might be doing? Like teaching people how to do this stuff? How do I do this?
Yeah, it's really easy actually, and it's good to use with kids or to do with kids as well. Is you get these plastic, they're called lettuce knives, right? So they're these plastic serrated knives, and then I just buy like bags of cheap lettuce for the kids so that they can learn to curve their fingers. And you start with those, right? You just start rushing through lettuce, make salads all week, or just do like spinach and saute it. Like 20 pounds of spinach will saute down into a cup.
Right.
So using those knives, they're like $3. You can buy them on Amazon. They're called salad knives. They're serrated plastic knives. That's a great way to just because it's just muscle memory. You got to just keep doing it over and over and over again. And then from there, graduate into bags of onions, right? Just start doing it with onions over and over. And then caramelize your onions, make French onion soup. Once again, same principle applies, because when you cook or you cut, 20 pounds of onions and you ultimately caramelize them and saute them down for a French onion soup, you've got like a cup of caramelized onions because all that moisture is cooked out and the sugar is caramelized. So you're going to use them in the right application. You just got to get that muscle memory down.
All right, more of a lightning round here. You only get one cut of steak for the rest of your life, like one place from the cow. What is it?
Oh, hanger steak all day, also known as the butcher steak. Hangs off the tenderloins, really beefy, tons of richness, and very tender.
Look at him. The chef goes with the butcher's cut. Makes sense to me, actually. I get that one. I was recently mocked for thinking that pistachio creme brulee was something that I should eat on election night to celebrate. What is your take on pistachio creme brulee? Would you agree that it is superior to, say, just normal creme brulee?
Yeah, I think you need that nuttiness and that richness in creme brulee. Otherwise, it's overwhelmingly velvety. So I actually like a little bit of a twist on the flavor, or if it's like some type of citrus in there. Why were you getting mocked? That's crazy. I mean,
people were saying it was too French and too fancy, and like I should have been eating apple pie instead. I was like, I don't know, like what's wrong with little pistachio creme brulee? I also, just so you know, my favorite ice cream flavor is pistachio. So there's a theme here. And Clay, my esteemed co-host, is always, he likes chocolate chip ice cream. So everyone's like, oh, he loves America. Like, that's what Chuck Norris would eat. And I'm over here like I've got a pinky ring and a monocle on eating my pistachio ice cream. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I think pistachio ice cream is just the best flavor.
And pistachios are actually an American nut. Like,
Thank you.
Half of California, half the water in California goes to the aristocratic pistachio. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And by the way, apple pie is junk. I mean, that's the biggest ruse in America, is that apple pie is good. It's disgusting. It's a mess.
Tell me more. Like, it's just not worth it?
Well, why, right? So you cut into it, the pie crust falls apart, and then you just got like soggy apples all over the place, caked with cinnamon. I'll eat an apple crumble before I'll eat an apple pie. Don't lie to me and tell me it's going to be a slice of pie. It's not. The apples just can't hold up to the pie. If you want to make a pie, make sure it's something that you can cut and eat pie in each piece, not some massive crumble with like apples falling apart.
I love this. We're both going to get lit up online for this, by the way, just so you know. So I'm looking forward to it. Before we close out here, just got to say, for our sponsor, IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews wishes you a blessed holiday season as you gather with family, friends, and enjoy the grateful blessings that we all have in this country. But let's remember those who are facing hardships over in Israel and in need of fellowship. During these times, Israelis are thankful to the fellowship for food and basic assistance. This is truly life-saving aid when the rest of the world seems to have turned its back on them. Your gift of $25 will help provide a food box to an elderly Jew or a Jewish family who are suffering and in desperate need. A gift of $100 will help provide 4 of these life-saving food boxes. This holiday season, please consider standing with Israel and the Jewish people. Go to supportifcj.org to make a gift. That's supportifcj.org. Chef Gruel, thanks as always, man. Where can people follow you, look at your amazing food photos, and eat at your restaurants, all that good stuff?
Yeah, follow me on X at Chef Gruel. It's calico-restaurant.com. Our cooking show, American Gravy's on right now. It's on Rumble. I've got a Substack at American Gravy where I post all the recipes from those cooking videos and just, keep an ear out.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Chef.
Thank you for having me.